There are growing warnings that food supplies in Gaza will soon run out. Israel has cut off aid, risking the lives of more than 2 million Palestinians. Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll tighten the siege even further if Hamas doesn't accept a ceasefire extension. So will his policy of starvation work? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Adrian Finighan. The dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza is getting worse by the day. The United Nations Food Programme is now warning that it only has food stocks to last a few days. With limited supplies and no fuel, all bakeries have already closed across the Strip. That's left Palestinians with no food, no home, and no sense of security. Israel has been blocking humanitarian aid from entering the Strip for over a month, fueling desperation and hunger. So is famine now inevitable? And will Israel continue to use starvation as a weapon of war against Palestinians in Gaza? We'll get to our guests in just a moment, but first a report from Katia Lopez-Horayan.
Access to food is now a luxury in Gaza. Crowds desperately scramble for bread outside this charity center in Beit Lahia in the north, where a daily meal isn't guaranteed. With bakeries now closed, charities have become their only lifeline.
Flour is limited, almost completely gone. The bakeries are shut down. Getting a loaf of bread has become a struggle.
The UN says its food stocks will run out within days. All 25 bakeries in the Gaza Strip have been forced to close because of Israel's blockade. That's led to a shortage of flour and cooking gas. Palestinians linger outside abandoned bakeries, unsure of where to go next.
I came here before dawn and went to all the bakeries in the area, but they were all closed. I came back to this bakery hoping that God will bless us with bread. What else can we do?
Israel has blocked all crossings into Gaza since early March, preventing the entry of food and humanitarian aid. In a visit to Hungary, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended his government's actions.
This is the historic moment we are in, fighting on several fronts for the eternity of Israel, and we are winning. With God's help, we will complete this victory soon.
Along with the lack of food and medicine, Israel is also expanding its attacks across the Strip. The staggering destruction complicating all types of assistance. 40-year-old Himam lost his sister after an Israeli strike in a Gaza City school. She was 9 months pregnant. He sifts through scattered baby clothes that will never be used.
What did my sister do? Did she have to die with her unborn baby and husband? The whole family is wiped out. The child had not yet seen the world.
With only days left of food supplies, the risk of severe hunger and malnutrition poses yet another threat for Palestinians trying to survive Israel's war on Gaza. Katia Lopez-Horayan, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
We'll go to our guests in just a moment, but first we're joined by Ahmad Al Najjar, who lives in Gaza and has been reporting on Israel's war. Thanks for being with us, Ahmad. Tell us what conditions are like there right now. Does anyone have enough to eat or drink?
Well, Adrian, the conditions now across the Gaza Strip are unspeakable. The family just going from one aspect of suffering to another. And this suffering is specifically about not having enough food to eat, if not having food at all to eat wherever the people are. Famine, hunger, starvation, the food, the very basic humanitarian needs to the people to survive are now denied to us here in Gaza since the start of this genocide, and even when this blockade on the entry of food supplies and the humanitarian aid over 30 days ago. Here, I'm sitting in one of the displacement camps inside the Al-Mawasi area, the infamous Al-Mawasi, the known for being humanitarian safe zone, as the Israelis are designating it, for the people to come. Families here are staying in inadequate shelters. Many of the families that are actually still coming are being displaced here in southern Gaza and from Khan Yunis and Rafah, as the Israelis are pushing with their military operations here. But they have nothing to stay in, because in addition to the blocking of food and the much needed humanitarian aid, also the sheltering for the people who lost their homes and have been forced now out of their already destroyed homes, do not have any place to come to, as Israel, over the course, the period when the ceasefire was in place, did not even allow the entry of sheltering or makeshift cabins for those people. And now they're basically staying in open fields, homeless again, and enduring this inhumane blockade, struggling to find a single meal every single day.
How much time in each day are people taking in the search for food? What are you doing to look after your own family, Ahmad?
Well, Adrian, in order to secure a decent meal of food or something to eat here on a daily basis, you either have two options. Either have a much amount of fortune that you are willing to pay to afford the very limited available items in the markets now, which already run out of many of the most basic food supplies, including flour, sugar, rice, cooking oil, all are now missing from our local markets here. And what is available is offered at astronomical prices for people who many of them are unemployed, don't have a source of income to afford such expensive food supplies to secure their meals. For the majority of the people, they are solely depending on the international working agencies or even the local charities to afford to find and get a single meal a day to satisfy their hunger with. But right now, many of those local charities and community kitchens here in southern Khan Yunis, inside these safe zones, have already shut down their operations because, like the markets and like everyone here, they are out of supplies. They're out of the needed means to prepare such meal. They either lack the food supplies itself, the ingredients, or even lack the means to prepare the meals for the people, of the cooking gas, of fuel, if they have generators, and whatever remaining community kitchens here, the operating ones are witnessing daily long and inhumane scene of queues and queues of people just lining up to get a single meal to eat, as this inhumane blockade is suffocating the people of Gaza here. And even those community kitchens are now a target of Israel. Just today here in the western Khan Yunis, an Israeli strike destroyed and bombed a community kitchen within the Khan Yunis camp, which killed 3 people. So it's not only preventing the entry of the needed food from the outside, but also destroying the remaining sources of food here in Gaza.
Ahmed, many thanks indeed for being with us. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Let's bring in our guests. From Oxford in the UK, we're joined by Sam Rose, Acting Director of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in Gaza. From Geneva, we're joined by Martin Griffiths, Director of Mediation Group International and the former UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. And from London, we're joined by Firas El Echi, journalist and host of the Here's Why podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Sam, let's start with you. You were in Gaza 2 weeks ago. What did you make of what you heard from Ahmad just there? How is food insecurity affecting people? What did you see and experience when you were on the ground in Gaza?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ahmed painted an incredibly grim picture, but one that resonates with me, having spent 16 months the last 16 months in Gaza, and I just left a week or so ago. And what I could hear from him is what we'd expect, that conditions have just gradually worsened over the past week, and they've worsened every day since aid or supplies have failed to come in. And let's not forget now, it's over a month that the Gaza Strip has been under complete blockade. And what your correspondent said, what he talked about in relation to food, we also have to kind of remind ourselves that the population were already on the verge of famine when the blockade was reinstated. Yes, as the international community and the aid community, we've been able to bring in stocks of food for 6 or 7 weeks, but that was enough just to stabilize people. It wasn't enough to allow their conditions to improve. So they're back to where they were. They're under conditions of constant bombardment. 280,000 people have been displaced as well. So people are back exactly where they are in terms of desperation, in terms of fear, in terms of cruelty, in terms of humiliation, and living knowing that tomorrow will be worse than today unless and until these conditions change.
Martin, is Israel using starvation as a weapon of war?
Well, Adrian, I think that's a good question. I remember being asked this in the first part of the war, in the first 6 months, indeed by the International Criminal Court. And I said, I just don't know the motive, which is obviously part of the answer to your question. But now I think the motive is inescapably visible. It's using this as coercion to get their deal, the release of hostages, after which they will eliminate Hamas. And Hamas, of course, wants the implementation of the agreed ceasefire, moving to phase 2. So I think it is being used now, and that's a war crime, if proved. And I think what is really needed, therefore, Adrian, is now, because the evidence is so clear, including the killing of aid workers the other day, that it's a case for action independently through the UN, probably, through the mobilization of member states and their obligations and under the law, and then to the courts to prosecute.
Okay, for the courts to prosecute, you say, but given that this is happening under the full glare of the world's media, where at the moment is the outrage, the international condemnation of Israel's actions? Why is it not being pressed now by world powers to stop?
Yeah, you know, it's a startling reality that world powers have not stood up to their own responsibilities under the law, as well as their conscience. Some have. France, Jordan, Indonesia, and some other governments are mobilizing a process which they started a year ago precisely on this matter. But it still gets stuck in the Security Council. And frankly, as you know, Adrian, whatever outrage there is, and there is appallingly little, hasn't led to action. And I think this is a terrible stain on our conscience. So it's not just Israel, which is doing these deplorable and illegal things, but it's also states responsible for the international humanitarian law and the Geneva Conventions to speak out because they should and because they're legally obligated to do so. And they're not doing it. That's why the media is so important right now.
Firas, do you agree that what Israel is currently doing, or rather not doing, amounts to criminal conduct? Does its prevention of aid crossing into Gaza amount to a war crime?
Absolutely, but this has been going on for years now, decades. It's not October 7th. What's surprising and what's new to us and what we continue to learn shockingly in the last 16 months is that Israel can get away with it. I mean, what's happening right now make us or forces us to re-question everything we thought we acquired after World War II, the international institutions, the international law. I mean, does it matter now after this that anybody anywhere in the world would come out and say, oh, but this is a war crime, but this cannot happen according to this law or to this court? Israel have showed us that there is a small club here that's strong enough that can be the exception, that they can cross whatever lines. And after the ceasefire, they're showing us that they can cross those lines again and again. I mean, man-made famine is happening right in front of our eyes. in 2025, after we've had, as you know, humanity, World War I and World War II, and here we are watching this again. So it's incredibly shocking, but it puts us in a place where we are to question everything we thought we acquired, even free media, even democracies. Everything is being seriously questioned. You take the United States, for example, and you've mentioned free media and how media is not actually talking about it enough in the West. When you see the same methods of intimidation that the US often points at China, some agents just showed up and kidnapped somebody for expressing his opinion. Well, here we are having this against students in the United States. So not only you have the crime happening in Israel, but you have intimidation happening across democracies in the Western world. Where are we going with this? I honestly don't know. But this and what Israel and the lines that it's crossing is pushing us to a point where we are reassessing everything we thought we've acquired.
So, Firas, the same question that I put to Martin here. How does this stop? Whose responsibility is it? Not only have more than 50,000 people been killed by indiscriminate bombing, now 2 million people imprisoned within Gaza and unable to leave are being starved to death.
This is the responsibility of everyone who has allowed the laws to be broken. Everyone who had us once believe in international law, that there is a justice, that the UN stands for something and it could do something, that the international courts can do something. Obviously, Big Sam here, Big Uncle Sam, is supposed to be the idol, the leader, the ones that shows us what it means to have a free world. But apparently the standards are changing. We are in different times now. The responsibility clearly goes to the Congress that's passing the laws for, 2,000-pound bombs to go to Israel day in and day out, providing AI assistance for Israel to target intentionally civilians. Frankly, I did not think that in 2025 we can sit by and watch the crimes. But at least for our part as journalists, we have to speak up. Students have to speak up. Everyone around the world have to speak up, at least so we can be able to say to the future generations that yes, this happened, but we were there to say no. Where we go from here, I do not know. It's for me clear that Israel's intention is to displace the Gazawis and to take over Gaza, not colonialism, not occupation, but make it part of Israel. So I think the next days, I'm really worried about it. And I'm afraid the worst is still ahead of us when it comes to this.
Sam, how close to famine is Gaza right now? Are parts of Gaza already experiencing famine?
I mean, I'm not in a position to determine that. I mean, assessments have repeatedly been carried out, and they've shown that nobody has enough food. There are massive increases in malnourishment amongst children. People are scavenging around for the basics every single day and are facing, sustained periods without enough food, whether they're in a position of famine or on the verge of famine. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter. They're in absolutely desperate conditions and they can do nothing about it. And Sam, not only do we as the international...
What Sam, does starvation do to young bodies in terms of mental and physical development? You talk about children in particular. What does it also mean for the elderly, for nursing mothers?
I mean, for children, if children don't get enough food in their first two years of life, then it has lifelong consequences in terms of their physical development, in terms of their medical development. Children who are malnourished, who are living in conditions of fear, lack of water, lack of proper shelter, rampant disease, incomplete immunization programs, poor public health are at much, much greater risk of succumbing to disease. Their organs will begin to fail. Their skin will start to shrivel, and they will die. And this is what we have been seeing in Gaza over the past 16 months. I mean, Gaza is a place where it's very, very easy to control the flow of supplies. Right now, we have one entry point for goods coming in that can be turned on or off at the whim of the occupying power, which it has done repeatedly over the past 16, 17 months, which it has done repeatedly over the past 20 years since the blockade has been into place. And not only are vast amounts of food just a few kilometers away in supermarkets in Israel, but the international community has thousands of trucks of aid waiting in El Arish to get in. We have shown what we can do as an aid community when the borders are open, when the conditions allow it. But right now, there is almost nothing we can do. At UNRWA, we have a few days worth of food available. The WFP has a few days of food available. Community kitchens are functioning, but they're providing a fraction of what people need. And your question about old people, yeah, they will suffer as well. Everyone suffers when there isn't enough food. And as I said, we had a 6-7 week window during the ceasefire when supplies came in. That is just enough to stabilize people's health. It doesn't allow them to put weight on. It doesn't allow them to start recovering. So people are again descending into these conditions of malnourishment, of undernourishment, and the situation that we saw during the worst parts of the first phase of the war, we will see repeated unless the borders open, unless that opening of the borders is sustained.
Martin, as an occupying power, what obligations does Israel have under international humanitarian law, and how has it managed to continually violate those obligations?
Yes, can I take, simply on the first question, Adrian, it has the obligation to provide essential services and proper protection, security and governance support to the people under occupation. Well, we can all see that ain't happening here either. And so they're in breach of their legal obligations as well as their moral obligations. And I think on the second, as Firas said, this is not a new story, it's just more egregious. There's no doubt anymore, as if there ever was, that the killings of the aid workers the other day is a potential, or probably, in my view, actual war crime, that the blockade itself is using coercion and the breaking of occupying parties' responsibilities to coerce the other through the destruction of Gaza and through the suffering of their people. And thirdly, Adrian, if I could quickly say, one of the things that is absent, is not sufficiently addressed, it's a bit surreal to say this right now in the middle of crisis, is where is the future? Firas talked about it. I understand that some of the Arab states are building on the Egyptian plan to provide a way forward for the future. But nobody can claim there's any hope for the people of Gaza at the moment, because also there's no international agreement on where this should end up. And we all know where it should end up. It's not about a Riviera or a real estate development. It's about the rights of Israel to security and the Palestinian people to statehood. To frame that properly as the correct alternative, publicly and in negotiations, may give a glimpse of the alternative that Israel is imposing on the Palestinian people.
Firas, you are nodding in agreement there. Do you want to come in on that?
Yes, but I think that in a world right now that's ran by Donald Trump, that's ran by Netanyahu, both agree that there will be no Palestinian state, both agree that there is no such thing as a two-state solution. I don't see how we can come to this position where we can solve this problem peacefully and through diplomatic channels. I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can, but looking at the bigger picture right now, I think people should take to the streets again around the world, pressure their governments again, because where we're sliding right now, where we're heading right now, is the plan that Netanyahu's always dreamed of, which is an Israeli Gaza and an annexation of the West Bank. And I'm afraid this is what's happening right now. And what's worrying me, and I'm asking questions here, why the silence around the world? Where are those protests? Where is that every Saturday morning here in London? Are we okay with this? Is it becoming normal? Because that's the only way to force people like Donald Trump and Netanyahu to come back to their minds. I remember the pressure that Biden was facing when people took to the streets across the United States. So for us to bring this back to a path where there's hope of a two-state solution, people have to take to the streets.
Okay. Sam, picking up on what you were saying just a few moments ago about trucks waiting to enter Gaza, presumably a lot of perishable goods will have rotted by now. But there is enough aid, you're saying, but it's just not being allowed to enter Gaza right now.
That's correct. Thousands of trucks of supplies are stuck outside, and they have been for months and months. We had this bright spot during the ceasefire when those trucks could get in, but since then it's ground tragically to a halt. But I mean, we reduced this situation and the conditions of the Palestinian people in Gaza to one that can just be addressed with aid trucks. I mean, you can't live on flour alone. I just fear that it's, reducing it to that risks dehumanizing the situation. Yes, it's about aid, but it's also about fresh fruit. It's about basic healthcare services. It's about water supplies. It's about everything. It's about shelter. It's about everything that people need to live a dignified existence. Okay. And right now, not only is the aid not getting in, but people have none of that, and they're living in a climate of complete fear and humiliation.
All right, we're almost out of time. Martin, as a former senior UN Under-Secretary General, a highly respected humanitarian, what would you say to world powers right now concerning this ongoing desperate situation in Gaza?
I'd say that I don't know. I haven't seen in my 5 decades of involvement in humanitarian work any situation like this where aid is completely blocked, obviously a war crime, and is not addressed as a criminal act. I think it's unique, and I think what's needed, Firas was saying the same thing, I think what's needed is, I don't put my trust in the United States and Israel to change their minds voluntarily. I don't see any evidence of that. But I do put my trust, and I always have, and with good evidence, in people across the world. People haven't lost humanity. That's for damn sure. And I've seen it everywhere. Burkina Faso, London, even, and so forth. So I think Firas is right. Mass mobilization, an establishment of the international conscience, and then it's the other states that need to act on United States and Israel to bring us back to 80 years ago, the United Nations was formed, and it's now paralyzed by this toxic division in morality and vision. This is a case which tests us, and this is a case which legally and in terms of mobilization cannot be left to fester as it has been these last 16, 17 months. Always hope in my life. Thank you.
Gentlemen, there we must leave it. Many thanks indeed for being with us. Sam Rose, Martin Griffiths, and Firas El Echi, and right back at the beginning of the program, of course, Ahmad Al Najjar. Thank you too for watching. You can see the program again at any time by going to the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us at our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can join the conversation on X. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha. We'll see you again. Bye for now.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.